You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the 400th episode of the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated across our partners on radio and TV, through our live streaming partners on YouTube, Rumble, and X, and of course first out of 93 WIBC in Indianapolis, where this whole little project got started. And speaking of getting started, some breaking news right out of Washington, D.C. The National Guard will be extending their deployment through December. That is happening. There was about 3.5 seconds of debate as to whether or not Congress was going to allow Trump to continue using the National Guard in Washington, D.C. There were many clutching pearls and saying, well, they're not actually stopping the crime, because, you know, I don't know of many people who try to commit crimes in front of uniformed guardsmen. Again, when I was in Jerusalem just a couple of weeks ago, I asked a guy outside of a convenience store if, you know, he, as a young guy, had ever considered robbing a building. And in comical fashion, he looked at the 3 IDF soldiers standing next to the building, looked back at me, he's like, are you kidding me? So, you know, I see the deterrence. And yes, according to the data, it is working. So much so that even Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser has advocated for the Guard to stay. So this from the Washington Examiner, I think they had the best write-up. The D.C.'s National Guard troops, that would be the 74th Troop, have orders to stay in the district through December, according to National Guard officials. Trump deployed the troops as part of a larger federal law enforcement plan in the district and possibly in the country at certain regions to crack down on crime. And of course, Trump federalized D.C.'s police force. Now, here's the catch. About 1,300 Guard soldiers from West Virginia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Tennessee are also in Washington. And it's really unclear at this point whether or not their orders are going to end there, or if Trump is going to send the Louisiana National Guard immediately to New Orleans and to Shreveport. The Republican governor of Louisiana has expressed interest. Governor Lee in Tennessee is currently receiving a lot of fire from both sides of the aisle because Memphis is not a place that you would maybe do well to be out in the middle of the night with one's family scooting around the park. You might find yourself mugged, stabbed, mugged then stabbed, stabbed then mugged. Quite a selection down in Memphis, Tennessee. This brings us to a couple of judicial update pieces of breaking news. So first of all, one of the U.S. appeals courts has slapped down the judge who tried to shut down Florida's Alligator Alcatraz. So Alligator Alcatraz is staying open. So I'll let you hear it straight from the alligator's mouth, Ron DeSantis.
The mission continues on immigration enforcement. The media was giddy that somehow Alligator Alcatraz was, quote, shutting down. Now, we told them that that wasn't true. There have been illegal aliens continuing to be there and being removed and returned to their home country. But they ran with the narrative because some leftist judge ruled implausibly that somehow Florida wasn't allowed to use our own property to help the federal government in this important mission because they didn't do an environmental impact statement. Well, we said we would fight that. We said the mission would continue. And I'm pleased to say that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has just stayed that ruling and stayed the case. So Alligator Alcatraz is, in fact, like we've always said, open for business. The mission continues, and we're going to continue leading the way when it comes to immigration enforcement.
So those particular things aside, we do have to get to some of the other major moves that are also breaking. This just before 6 from the Department of Justice has now filed a lawsuit against the city of Boston and its mayor, Democrat Michelle Wu, over her aggressive push to keep sanctuary city laws in place. From Attorney General Pam Bondi, quote, "The city of Boston and its mayor have been among the worst sanctuary offenders in America. They explicitly enforce policies designed to undermine law enforcement and protect illegal aliens from justice. If Boston won't protect its citizens from illegal alien crime, this Department of Justice will." I voted for this. Now, judges are starting to file all kinds of orders as quickly as they can again. But before we get there, let's take a moment to make sure that we get the latest. Where we go over to Elizabeth Mitchell, the Daily Signal's own White House correspondent, right outside of the White House. Glad it stopped raining there for you, Elizabeth.
Me too. Thanks, Tony.
All right, let's dig right in. I know Marco Rubio is squaring up with, I want to get sure I get this right, the entire UN over this Venezuela drug boat situation. What's going on?
That's true. So, of course, we know the Trump administration cracked down on that drug boat. They've called Maduro a criminal and a terrorist. And Rubio had a great line today. He said in Mexico that he doesn't care what the UN says. We know that this man is a criminal. We know that these drugs coming into our country are extremely dangerous for Americans. And no matter what the UN says, the U.S. is going to do something about it.
Well, the rest of the American media is not really focused on standing up to Venezuelan leaders or leaders over at the UN. They're more focused on standing up to the Trump administration. I know that the National Guard conversation around what Trump's DOJ and, of course, the Joint Chiefs of Staff are looking at, maybe Louisiana, less than Chicago. What's the latest in that arena?
So we found out this week that D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, was supporting the Trump administration in their crackdown on D.C. crime, in releasing the National Guard, federalizing the police. She said that she would support that beyond the 30-day limit for which the Trump administration is authorized to federalize the police, and agreed to partner with the administration. However, a different Democrat, the Attorney General of D.C., is suing the Trump administration for letting loose the National Guard in D.C., saying that it is unconstitutional. And so that's a new lawsuit. But the Trump administration is continuing to defend its stance on this.
Hang on a second here. Isn't this like the second lawsuit from that particular office in like a month, trying to sue the Trump administration over the National Guard, the federal city National Guard in the federal city, Washington, D.C.?
That is true. In the Trump administration, the White House gave me a statement today saying they stand with what they're doing. They absolutely have the authority under the Home Rule Act to deploy the National Guard, and they're going to stick with it.
So I know there's another exclusive coming straight out of the White House staff to you, regards kind of the congressional fight now back in. I know we can talk about the RFK situation at the Hill, but you're not standing outside the Capitol building right now. Instead, I want to talk about what else the White House is focused on regarded to Congress. They gave an exclusive over to you about what they were hoping the House Republicans might focus on when it comes to media over the next couple of months in the big, beautiful bill. Tell us about it.
So I talked to several House Republicans who were in a meeting yesterday morning with Caroline Leavitt and other top White House officials, in which those officials told them how they should do their messaging around the big, beautiful bill going into midterms. And they had a really interesting message, which is that these members should not just do traditional interviews with mainstream media like CNN and Fox News, but they should switch over to doing new media interviews on podcasts like Joe Rogan, maybe even podcasts like the Tony Kinnett cast. And so that was a really interesting strategy right there. And the House Republicans told me they received that well. Some of the older ones said that's a new thing to them. Some of the younger ones, Kat Kammick, one of the youngest, told me that this is just common sense to her. But regardless of the age of the Congress member, I think the message was really heard.
Okay, so about the message being heard, and this is kind of the last thing because I know you guys are moving. We've actually had to set up the interview because people are moving in and out of the press briefing room even now. So when Caroline Leavitt is delivering messages, again, on the Daily, you're right there on the left aisle, right as you get up to the podium. What does it appear that the Trump administration is focused on the comm side? They've got about 36 balls up in the air right now. There's a lot of stuff they could be talking about, but we're getting into midterm season finally here. So what does it appear to be the top messaging point heading into September of 25?
I think that's definitely law and order right now with this DC crackdown, with talk of crackdowns in other crime-ridden cities like Baltimore, Chicago, and New Orleans. We know this is a message that is very popular with residents of these cities, residents of these states, both Republican and Democrat. And so we know that that law and order crackdown throughout the country is really strong, especially since Democrats in response are definitely appearing pro-crime, which is not a good look heading into midterms.
Right. Well, of course, the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois stated that the Republican administration should be focused on red states with their blue cities crime-ridden first. And it appears the Trump administration might be following in those footsteps, sending the National Guard to Shreveport and New Orleans. Has Caroline Leavitt given any kind of statistics on the crime in New Orleans, Shreveport, other Louisiana locales?
This is a great strategy because the president has said repeatedly that he wants J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, to call him and ask him to come to Chicago. He doesn't want to just send National Guard. He wants to be asked. But the governor of Louisiana, of course, is a Republican and does want the Trump administration to send National Guard and clean up this crime. And so I think if they start there, that's going to be a really good start. And the people of Chicago, Baltimore, these other blue cities and blue states are going to continue saying to their Democrat governors, please let the National Guard come here and clean up the crime.
Gotcha. But no, Carolyn hasn't walked forward and maybe shared a bunch of stats on crime in Chicago or Louisiana yet.
I'm not sure, but a lot of stats have been released on Chicago about all the murders that occurred. Last weekend, they were talking about how many murders occurred. Meanwhile, hardly any murders have occurred in D.C. since the National Guard got deployed there. I'm seeing them all the time. I got ice cream over the weekend right outside the ice cream store, National Guard. I went on a walk by a local park, Lincoln Park, and there were National Guard going around there. It feels very safe here, and people in other cities want that too.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that taking a walk without getting mugged is a positively wonderful experience. Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, thanks for a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Darnie.
All right, so I'm going to send the radio crew over to commercial. Otherwise, we're going to get fined by the FCC. So, Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Whew, that was a close one. All right, so I do want to point out a couple of big additional pieces of news that are still breaking as we speak. So, first of all, that broke before the show. A federal judge has recently lifted the 13-year oversight of the Seattle Police Department on September 3rd, essentially that tied the hands of Seattle police. And this is, of course, the domain of the one and only Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, whose entire job is filing some of the most incredible lawsuits that are grudge matches against those who have been hurting Americans for years. The Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon.
Hi, I'm Harmeet Dillon from the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division with a very important update from Seattle, Washington, where today, after over 13 years, a federal judge has finally ended the consent decree imposed on Seattle's police department by the Obama administration Department of Justice and returned the local control of Seattle's policing to the people of Seattle. This is a great day for Seattle. Congratulations on meeting the court's obligations and the consent decree requirements, and on finally enjoying the freedom of local control, which is something that we at the DOJ really hope for all of our communities in the United States, to keep them safe, free, and under local accountability. Congratulations, Seattle.
And again, that's Seattle. Now, the response to these particular judges, again, coming in as quickly as one might expect, are judges rushing to kind of flip things the other way. So this just breaking right before the show. A federal judge has now attempted to block U.S. President Donald Trump's administration from, quote, unilaterally cutting billions of dollars of foreign aid authorized by Congress that is set to expire at the end of September, end quote. That's according to Reuters. Another federal judge stepping in and saying Trump cannot, as the executive branch, spend monies allocated by Congress to different parts of the executive branch. Again, Congress kind of played its own game here and lost, where it gave a lot of power up to the executive branch. And now the judicial wants to come in at the federal level, not at the Supreme Court level, and try to split awkward hairs for political points, as Chuck Schumer has wanted them to do for a very long time. But as, of course, when I read this out loud to producer Nick, I'm not going to tell you how high my blood pressure shot up. U.S. District Judge Amir Ali in Washington. By the way, Amir Ali under James Boasberg, that's the guy who has dual citizenship to Canada. I'm going to be real with you here. If you are serving in the United States government in any capacity, you're a judge, you're a congressman, you're a state official, you should not have dual citizenship to no other country. None. Not to Canada, not to the United Kingdom, not to Israel, not to Pakistan, not to Saudi Arabia, not to Qatar, not to South Africa, nowhere. Either you are solely a citizen of the United States or you do not serve in office. And it just so happens, he's ruling on Trump and foreign aid. He's a citizen of another country. But, producer Nick, you look like you're itching to jump in here.
Forget the conflict of interest there.
Yeah, God forbid. So that brings us over to yet another case. This is according to Mike Davis over at the Article 3 Project. The same Boston Obama judge, that's Allison Burroughs, who allowed Harvard to discriminate against Asian students and applicants, is now letting Harvard off the hook for its anti-Jewish, its anti-Semitic series of violations, which is just freaking incredible. Now, there's a lot more on the judicial side. Judges complaining to NBC via an actually unprecedented, 10 different anonymous quotes from judges who are upset that Supreme Court judges smacked them in the teeth. So we're going to have to cover that in just a bit here because we have to get over to the SmackDown. Don't go anywhere. You're going to want to tune in. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, or as we call it today, the Thunderdome. I'm excited. You like the little John Cena introduction there, the bumper? We love getting to use that. Welcome back because RFK Jr., the secretary appointed to be the director of Health and Human Services, the guy who's in charge of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, that Bobby Kennedy Jr., he hit the floor of the Senate today before the Finance Committee. And anytime, we've said this before, if there is one thing that irks me more than anything else in Congress, it is Jasmine Crockett. And if there's anything else, if there's a number two that irks me more than anything else in Congress whatsoever, it is that every committee, because of the television cameras, not just C-SPAN 1 and 2, but C-SPAN 3 and CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and all of the other outlets, including occasionally our own cameras, have created a spectacle magnet in which senators and representatives climb into the committee rooms and they just start swinging fists and they get into big fights. Why? Because they're actually trying to hold things accountable? No. Because it's a moment to be on camera and campaign. If you're in the House, it's an opportunity for you to someday campaign to run for the Senate. And if you're in the Senate, it's an opportunity for you to campaign one day to either be the President of the United States or one of the hand-picked little goobers that gets put in a cabinet position. And I've said this for ages on both sides of the aisle. It was no different today. And the Democrats had a very clear runway before them because of the recent drama with the Centers for Disease Control firings. All the Democrat senators had to do, which to be fair is a really, really huge ask for the Democrats, was not be crazy. Just ask direct questions calmly. Harry Potter, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? Dumbledore asked calmly. All you got to do is just be relaxed. And then RFK Jr., if he says something that's a little out there, let the media outlets take it and magnify it and turn it into the end of all things. That's all you got to do. Say, Tony, why do you say that? Because I will point to one of the greatest freshmen in the House of Representatives, Brandon Gill of Texas, who has this strategy. He just says calm questions, and then the CEO of NPR goes bonker berserk in the committee. It's incredible. Now, did the senators do this? No, they decided to out crazy RFK Jr. Now, like a lot of the members of the Trump administration, they're mavericks. They are dropped in like rabid wolverines to tear up all of the garbage Americans are sick of. And so, again, there were questions about RFK's leadership, and the quotes from just Bobby Kennedy alone today were pretty measured, and a lot of Americans agree with, one of these being RFK's take on vaccines.
You know, I say I'm not anti-vaccine. Saying I'm anti-vaccine is like saying I'm anti-medicine. Well, I'm pro-medicine, but I understand some medicines harm people. Some of them have risks. Some of them have benefits that outweigh those risks for certain populations, and the same is true with vaccines. And we don't understand the risk profile because vaccines are the only medical intervention, medical device, or pharmaceutical drug that are exempt from pre-licensing safety studies.
And that is objectively true. By the way, I'm not a fan of his take on the MMR vaccine. But what he stated in the committee is objectively true. By the way, this kind of what I like to call like philosophical nitpicking, where I can still agree with someone in general, as opposed to disagreeing with them on one thing. Little example here. There is a host on our home station out of 93 WIBC, Kendall and Casey Show. It's an excellent show, hosted by, you guessed it, Rob Kendall and his partner, Casey. And Rob Kendall and I very much disagree on redistricting here in my home state of Indiana. Yeah, we disagree. But on the whole, Rob's got a lot of great policy and ideas, and so I happen to support a lot of the junk that he said. The same with RFK Jr. here. I disagree with the dude on MMR. Most of the things that Kennedy then comes in front of the committee and says, measured pretty normal stuff. Kind of weird. Yeah, producer Nick.
How dare you have a simple disagreement in opinions and analysis?
As an independent fundamental Baptist, we pride ourselves in having tons of disagreements on the daily. Sit one of us down and mention the words Calvinism, Arminianism, and Biblicism. We'll have an argument that will rattle your socks, not just knock them off. But alas, the Senate hearings, as I told you, are not actually about asking questions that are relevant to the committee, in this case, the Finance Committee. It's all about senators from around the country simply, getting up, trying to do mini lectures for the cameras, as though they're all trying to be Ben Shapiro at this college saying, look, you fools, you need to understand that you can't just take money from people forever. That's what all of the senators are trying to be. That was not a bad Ben Shapiro impression.
Just not fast enough. Nobody can be fast enough.
No, not as good as the legendary Hebrew Hammer there, alas. Anywho, Democrat senior senator of Minnesota, Tina Smith, the one who doesn't abuse her staffers like Klobuchar does. She took, don't take my words for it that they say this is all just about camera time and lectures. Here's Tina Smith saying it herself.
What you have said has contradicted yourself and others. It's, I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to start here. Over the last 8 months, you have claimed to make America healthy again. But in actual fact, you have led the charge in the Trump administration to destroy what is best in our healthcare system. And your denials and your evasion and your lies here do not change that. You are the Secretary of the Health and Human Services, yet you're trafficking in these fringe idea and discredited theories that are completely out of step with the scientific consensus. And you seem to be willing to say anything in the moment, even if it's untrue. So last time you were before Congress, Secretary Kennedy, you anti-vax. I have next to me, Secretary Kennedy, so that there's no safe and effective vaccine.
Both things are true.
Oh, so more denial, more back and forth. Here's what I know. Here's what I know.
Let me explain why, Senator. You just
actually, I want you to listen to me.
There you go. He's like, do you want me to explain why and any of that? No, I want you to listen to me. Okay, there you go. Straight from the horse's mouth. And not even good stuff. I don't know what in the world. When we say that the bench for the Democrats is shallow, it is really, really shallow. We're talking tadpoles couldn't even swim around in this thing. Senator Ben Ray Lujan, whom I just learned existed, of New Mexico, took the time to lecture RFK Jr. that he was not going to give him a little pin on his blazer.
Look, two young ladies in Las Cruces, New Mexico at a town hall recently gave me this starfish pin. I was going to give it to you today, but
they gave me this starfish pin from Claire's, and I was going to give it to you, and now I'm going to give the rose to one of the other bachelors.
After your questioning today, I don't think you deserve it, because what this represents is to remember that every one of us can make a difference, sir, to something as small as a starfish on a beach that maybe got washed up, you throw it back in the ocean. You might not save them all, but you can save one. I'm sorry that you're not worthy of this. Nice little pin, sir, is a nice reminder. I'm going to...
Radio crew, we have to send you to commercial. I'm sorry, you guys don't get a starfish pin either. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. We're going to continue on the live stream. The show is already getting away from me, because how can I cut some of these clips short? How could you go? It's not even like a pin that's important, as though like a challenge coin. I love challenge coins. I think they're excellent. And anytime that I go to, especially to talk to an individual who's, participated in active combat, he has a challenge coin, former congressperson or senator, whatever it is. I love getting a challenge coin. Those actually have some meaning to them. Now, don't let Tim Walz give you one, because it'll have the wrong rank on it and it'll stolen valor. But in the case of the starfish pin, just two random girls gave, and it symbolizes peace and justice and my first period, and it's just wonderful. I'm not going to give it to you. Yes, thank you. Great. This is the Senate Finance Committee. All you got to do, if you want to impress Americans, just act normal. And somehow, yet again, RFK Jr. is the guy looking normal, and Senates are the ones beclowning themselves. Mazie Hirono from Hawaii is not even on this committee. And you had all of the chances in the world to not act stupid. The lowest IQ member of the Senate wasn't even in there.
Is he insinuating that he's not worthy of his position because he won't throw a starfish back in the ocean?
I'm not sure if he even has something that deep. We're going to skip Ray Lujan getting fact-checked by RFK. He then gets mad that RFK knows enough about it to fact-check. I want to skip down to, we're going to skip Cortez Masto just making things up on the spot. He does essentially point out why all of the Senate, he being RFK Jr., points out why all of the senators on the Democratic side of the aisle, a party of whom he was once a major contender and supporter of. Robert Wyden of Oregon gives a big complaint, and RFK hits him. This will be one of the clips that lives from today far into the future.
About anything you've done or plans to change it. And my last comment is, I hope that you will tell the American people how many preventable child deaths are an acceptable sacrifice for enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense.
He did the little MLK fist. He's doing the mimic. It's like he took a little master's class on hand gestures and speeches. I love it. He did a little, I have a dream that my hairline won't recede anymore this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do I get a reply? Or, Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%, and you said nothing.
Is that correct? Survey says yes. In fact, it is correct. And that is the only thing Bobby Kennedy has to say. Genuinely. It doesn't matter that, as one of the comments points out, the dude does look like a ghoul from Fallout. Oh, sorry, that's Senator Robert Wyden. Yeah, he does look like a ghoul from Fallout. That's well put. RFK Jr. may have a raspy voice. He may say something from time to time that is a bit uncouth. But I'm going to let you on a little secret, and we will come back probably in bonus tonus. Rest in peace, producer Daniel. Because every time that the Democrat senators got bonkers today, he just calmly responded that they're full of it. Senator Elizabeth Warren gets called out.
Marty McCary, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Oz, Vinay.
Sorry, that's when Bernie Sanders starts yelling. We'll go Elizabeth Warren.
You are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
That is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from.
I'm sorry. We're at the end of the commercial break. All producers are waving our hands. We got to pick up the radio crew. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Maybe it's just a blessing from the Lord that the radio crew has returned to us to enjoy the clip of Elizabeth Warren being karate chopped in the neck by RFK Jr. Because I can't help it. I know we're a little behind schedule now. It doesn't matter. Elizabeth Warren getting karate chopped in the neck is one of my favorite American values.
You are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
That is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
Well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is everyone who wants it. That was your promise.
I know I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign?
Incredible. Incredible. The Thunderdome. It's back. I kind of missed after the Senate confirmation hearings ended, because every single again, we're in midterm season right now. It has started. It has officially begun. And here we are having the same fistfights, and the Democrats are making the same fools out of themselves. Now, over in Bonus Tonus, I will have to play a bit of polling data here for you that shocked me about RFK Jr. and the American people. But before that, we got to get to the Cuban Supreme, Marco Rubio, the man for whom the Venezuelan bell tolls. Allow me to explain why. The Venezuelan regime, run by Maduro, also controls the narco-terrorist organization Tren de Aragua. This is not just a fact known to the American intelligence communities. It has also been independently verified by the French of all intelligence organizations, along with the Five Eyes. Those are the American partners in the Anglosphere: New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the UK. The entirety of the Western European intelligence apparatus has confirmed Tren de Aragua is in fact a foreign terrorist organization that is operated by the Venezuelan regime. Which is why, by the way, that the judge overruling Trump's Alien Enemies Act deportation of Tren de Aragua gang members will be overruled if it has to go all the way to the Supreme Court. They're a narco-terrorist organization directly controlled by a regime. And therefore, Alien Enemies Act applies. Sorry, don't like it? Womp womp. But the UN has now chimed in. Oh, yes, thank God. When I was in the Middle East 2 weeks ago, I had the beautiful opportunity to observe two different UN forces in Lebanon and in Syria. And look, I'm just going to level with you. I have seen JROTC cadets. No. I have seen Boy Scouts in their very first year who can't even tie their own shoes, much less any of the fancy knots Boy Scouts are known for. I have seen far better discipline and arms carrying in the first year Boy Scouts than I saw from actual boots on the ground combat UN troops. But the UN has now tut-tutted the United States and President Trump for sinking a cartel boat. Again, the UN openly fine with, again, the massive practice of human trafficking and, rape and grooming and all other kinds of practices that are totally fine in a lot of the constituent nations of the UN. Rubio ain't having it. Here you go.
No, you're wrong in your question. Number one, Venezuela is a major source. And the reason why is the following. And I've seen a lot of this reporting, and it's fake reporting, and I'll tell you why. It says that somehow Venezuela is not involved in the drug trade because the UN says they're not involved in the drug. I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That means the Southern District of New York presented the evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. And then a superseding indictment came out that was unsealed about a year and a half ago that specifically detailed Maduro's actions. So number one, let there be no doubt, Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
So again, Rubio just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. That is who you need as a Secretary of State. Just in the same way that Vice President candidate, then Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, was a formidable opponent because he just didn't care. All of the pearl clutching, all of the whining that will cow senators like Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski, it doesn't bother Rubio. He'll look you in the eye and tell you you're stupid. That's useful. That is useful, and it is beneficial to the American people. So what did the Venezuelans do? They launched the fishing boats at the U.S. Armada outside via a TikTok video. Now, there is no translation of this particular video being spoken in Spanish. The Venezuelan dialect is a little rusty for me. I translated this before the show myself. So if I get this terribly wrong, well, here you go. I don't think we've ever had a kind of a live translation kind of a test. I tried to write a few notes down, but the fishing boats of Venezuela are planning to scare off the United States Navy. Look at this beautiful view of the Caribbean, I think.
Nuestros pescadores patriotas alistándose por la defensa de la paz y la soberanía.
Our patriot, and this is kind of the rough part. I know it's patriot. And then I think he says fishermen. I'm pretty sure the word is fishermen. Are gathering for the defense of peace and sovereignty. So again, for those who are listening, you're not watching, they are riding bass boats that would be overtaken by the cheapest Ranger boat on any Midwestern lake. And the HVAC repairman behind him in a white tank top and ill-fitting swim trunks and the gold chain that looks like he stole it from The Sopranos is about to take over. He's about to get the full shot here. He says, here we go. So he either says his father is here or my father is here. The word's not really there. Is manning the engine, or he's driving. Technically, the verb is piloting, but Venezuelan. Then he says, look at our... So he says, look at our armed forces navy. The word that's used is la fuerza armada. Hilarious they're using the word armada. I have seen fishing competitions in the dead heat of summer. High pressure front, not catching a darn thing. Far more boats. Far more impressive boats. A drunk redneck on a pontoon would be far more formidable than the bass. And by the way, there's real Venezuelan Navy here. He shows it very briefly in one frame. You can see the Venezuelan Coast Guard that is out there with them, providing, I guess, support on the wing. Producer Nick?
I don't know too much about boats, but why is the motor all the way to the left?
It may
in the image.
So it may be a twin motor. I don't know if it is or isn't. I haven't looked at the motors yet. But often you do steer. You don't just sit next to the motor. But you often there's like a lever. You can like steer it from the back to the side. Yeah.
Nuestra Fuerza Armada siempre acompañándonos. William.
Oh, this armada is always with us, is what he says. And then he says William, just out of nowhere. William! And they cut to a guy who looks like the villain from Alvin and the Chipmunks. Just like basic white bald dude in a neon Venezuela jacket. And he's packing a serious pregnancy belly. We finally found the male pregnant emoji from Apple. We found him, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. We are here in the fight for the defense of peace. And he turns it around, and it's like a wooden rowboat from Disneyland, and like 4 dudes huddled in the front. No arms, nothing. They're just out there flying a big Venezuelan flag. This is embarrassing. This is the response to the U.S. Navy from Venezuela here.
Is the main staple
we will.
Of these
so again, it's very hard to hear. Either they say we will be or we will live, we will stay, something like that, and then long live the patria, like the country, the nation, the movement, maybe. Again, depending on whom you're talking to. Incredible. There you go. The Venezuelan response. Every single time someone tries to tell me that because of Iraq and Afghanistan, American forces are outmatched by any fishermen in their boat. Honey, sweetie, baby, come on. Come on. All right, we're going to send the radio crew over to commercial before we bring on David Harsanyi. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot of great stuff on the live stream, including Yasmin Ansari from Arizona, learning how to curse on air. I love it. The strategies never get old. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. So one of the commonalities between all Democrats right now is that the illegal immigrants in their community are just as much their constituents as the voters. The problem is the classical definition for the word constituent does not match with this. So reporters, again, not just from the right, but from the center and from the left, are now asking Democrats who are actively campaigning, are you including all people, including illegal immigrants, in that particular whole shindig there? Here is, again, Yasmin Ansari from Arizona's response.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
We had to run this through the AI to clarify. So her question, there's going to be a word that doesn't make any sense. That word is constituent. Adobe just didn't pick it up.
Referring to those in mission as your constituents, do you view even those with absolutely no form of legal status at all as your constituents as well?
So I didn't realize this was such a controversy until the right-wing media started attacking me for using the word. So I Googled.
Not true. The socialist left, like Bernie Sanders, he was talking about this back in the 80s and the 90s. The Bill Clinton was talking about illegal immigrants not being constituents in 98. We have the coverage. And Bill Clinton was kind of actually pretty good on that, you know? What?
One of the staples of the left's rhetoric is what makes a citizen, what makes an individual able to vote. That supposedly dates back to the conception of our country.
Well, I'm just going to take a wild stab looking at this individual and listening to her voice that she really doesn't do a lot of historical reading.
Googled the word constituent.
There you go. I Googled the word constituent. Here we go.
For using the word. So I Googled the word constituent. The definition of constituent is somebody who is part of a community.
No, it's not. The word constituent in its most based modern definition, like the very basic watered down form, means part of a whole. So the question is, part of a whole of what? In this case, it is you are a part of the citizenry whom are represented via your taxation to Congress. That is why the House of Representatives is population apportioned. That is why you pay taxes. That's why the House of Representatives controls the purse. It's all connected. And that's not just me talking. They didn't just write this in the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton was so autistic. He wrote letters upon letters upon letters until Jay and Madison were on their deathbeds about why it had to be this way. My God, even Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote a musical about this so that these goofball theater majors could learn some history.
Doesn't matter what their legal status is. If somebody is an asylum seeker, if somebody has a green card, if somebody is a U.S. citizen, if somebody...
She's struggling because the last answer is an illegal immigrant. But she can't endorse that because she'll lose her next election, especially in Arizona. So she struggles. She starts to stutter like, and the other kind.
Lives in the community, I represent them. Constituent does not mean voter.
It does.
I don't care if none of these individuals can vote for me. I don't give a shit. I care about making sure that the United States government, with our taxpayer dollars
from whom is paying the taxpayer dollars,
is treating human beings with dignity and respect.
Incredible. All right. Good luck with that. Best of luck to you. And speaking of treating humans with dignity and respect, this brings us to how the media has covered the conflict in the Middle East and who gets to be an expert on genocide. And that brings us to David Harsanyi. Don't go anywhere. This is probably one of the best interviews we've done. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where today we are graced by the presence of a former member of one of the greatest academic institutions of all time. Of course, I'm talking about David Harsanyi, senior writer over at the Washington Examiner, co-host of You're Wrong with Molly Hemingway, former member now, I'm so sorry to break it to the rest of the crowd, of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. David, how are you coping with being kicked out of such an austere group of scholars?
It's been a roller coaster, I have to say, emotionally, but also professionally. I had joined yesterday morning for $125, actually, because, it depends. There are various tiers there to join. None of them, by the way, tethered to anything to do with academic, prowess or experience or anything like that. As I note in my bio on that site, my very narrowly, my main expertise is in like indie rock from the 80s and 90s, but yet I was allowed to join. So
that's true, because that music really killed it on the charts.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
So, I mean, if it's,
Exactly.
if it's a very important association. Now, for those of us who may not be in the highest beautiful pillars of the academic landscape, I mean, those of us who don't get to look down from the Acropolis on the mere mortals as you do, explain to us peons down in the mines what the International Association of Genocide Scholars is.
Well, I wasn't sure what it was because I hadn't heard about it until a few days ago, where I read that in the BBC, I think it was where I first saw it, but it was in virtually every establishment media outlet had reported the same, that the world's most renowned scholars on genocide had taken a vote, and they had decided that the Israelis were perpetrating a genocide in Gaza.
Oh, not just cited. They were quoted as the experts in the headline, experts in genocide, which, by the way, that's quite a title, to be an expert in genocide. I hope that isn't an experience-based kind of accolade, but
no.
Alas, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Continue.
Yeah, there are people who study, genocide. I mean, I think it's here it is. It's a legitimate topic and a legitimate thing to study in history, and it happens quite often, actually. The problem, though, is that, as with many things, experts have completely abandoned their credibility by being part of a propaganda effort, as this was. Once I became a member for a few hours, I went into the site, looked at the discussion boards, for instance, on this resolution declaring a genocide. There were literally zero comments. Yeah, I dove in there. There were no comments on this. They may have been turned off. I wasn't sure. But in any event, typically, we, as members of the association, would have had a debate about this, I'm told. But there was no debate. And obviously, very few people voted. I think maybe a fourth of people voted. We don't know who voted. We don't know who wrote the resolution because none of that has been transparent. But the important thing here is not that this is just some bogus association that even I could join. The point is that it was treated with a lot of news coverage and respect. And literally, the BBC, for instance, said, these are the world's most renowned scholars. If I had joined a month earlier, I could have voted on this. And I am not a world-renowned scholar in anything. So
you're not? Oh, I feel betrayed. I feel lied to. After all, again, when I started covering the international conflicts around the Middle East, the first thing that I looked for were academics who had such vibrant and deep-seated experience in 80s and 90s alternative rock and pop. And now that voice has been quashed. I mean, the Twitter account is gone after these series of exposés. I mean, it's really funny to see any kind of a grift or a scam just pop like a big soapy bubble in front of everybody. But the catastrophic inward collapse on this has truly been something to behold.
Well, they kicked me out. Just terrible. I hadn't broken any rules, any bylaws. I hadn't broken any of the rules they had for participation. In fact, within the bylaws or one of their pages, it says that members are supposed to have a open, fruitful debate on these topics. So I don't know what happened there. I want my refund. We'll see if that happens. But I think it's worth also mentioning that the resolution itself seems like it was written by randos. Like, there is no academic rigor here, right? It is just a bunch of what's interesting. It's just a bunch of hyperlinks, right, to the usual suspects saying the usual things. None of them to any member of the actual association who has done any kind of academic study. Like none of
that's really funny though.
Yeah, none of their studies are in there because. Obviously, it's not true. Yeah,
I mean that is in and of itself incredible. I used to be part of this tiny zoological society in Wisconsin because I was a science education major, and you throw all of your you join something like that. I don't even remember if it was for extra credit. I also was a member of the vaunted Cloud Society. Yes, there is a Cloud Society. They send you a really cool picture like once a month of, you guessed it, a really cool picture of clouds. And whenever they would release some kind of a newsletter. And again, I itched in excitement to get these newsletters in my inbox. I mean, I would wake up and run to my computer like a child running to the Christmas tree on December 25th. And when I would get there, I would see links to things their own society members had written, citations, this study conducted by great vaunted member, professor, whatever. And you're not even seeing in this particular example of the, again, incredible Genocide super duper Society of Scholars International. They're not even citing themselves. Do you think it's more likely that ChatGPT or Grok compiled this particular manifesto together?
That's what it reads like, honestly. It's when you have maybe a freshman, an earnest freshman pulling stuff together and he thinks a lot of hyperlinks means actual research. That's what it reads like. And then, of course, it's like the thesis, the central claim is a complete lie. It's based on Hamas, casualty numbers. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. It goes beyond that. Hamas, I think, says 58,000 people have been killed. This group that I was a part of and proud to be a part of says that 50,000 children alone were killed. I'm surprised it didn't say, budding poets and, whatever. I mean, it is
doctors and lawyers, the person who probably would have cured cancer, the next Willa Tharp. I mean, really, all of them.
I mean, an academic, at the very least, would make a distinction between fighters and civilians, right? Combatants and non-combatants. These are things that we talk about. I'm not a scholar on it, but I've read quite a bit.
But a music appreciator, maybe a lover, a picker, a grinner, playing their music on the run. I mean, seriously, you could have some producer that's going to add in that music as I say that. So I do want to ask real quick. Do you find it hilarious that we really are able to trick any number of publications or groups, not just on the left, but on the right? James Lindsay, along with Helen Pluckrose and Peter Bogassane, wrote those 20 fake articles, fake peer-reviewed studies that made it into all of those LGBTQ journals back in 2018. And now you're seeing another series of publications that are major media outlets like the New York Times or BBC, for example, that have all fallen prey just because some group calls themselves experts and you happen to agree with them. Now there you go. You have the all of the weight that you need to say whatever it is and claim nonpartisanship.
Well, there used to be this group like the Anne Frank Memorial something or other where, they were completely anti-Israel, somewhat anti-Semitic in my view, that were constantly being used as a moral guidepost for us.
Because the word Anne Frank is in the title.
Exactly. So it was a Soros thing. Yeah. I don't even blame an association for having an open membership, honestly, where you want to have discussions. It's not like you'd think, if you're not abusing the name in the way they did and the clout that comes with that name, I don't see a problem with it. The real problem's with the journalists who don't even look into see which scholars wrote it, who is involved. It's like Ben Rhodes used to talk about, what was Ben Rhodes saying about the press? I forget. But anyway, he used
no, sorry. His other saying, Ben Rhodes' other saying. Sorry, I get those confused. He has so many great quotes.
That's fantastic. I forgot what he called it, but it's it's basically the manipulation of young journalists who don't know anything, right? And that's what happened here. They're willing.
Say whatever you want. Someone will eat it up. I mean, we saw this from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson of Axios pointed out in the Original Sin that even the Biden administration was shocked at how readily kind of corporate media press was willing to take anything they fed them. And they were like, yes, of course, please, sir, may I have another? Before we run out of time here, though, I do want to ask, did you see that although now an inactive member from the Palestinian territory in Gaza City, an IAGS expert, Adolf Hitler, was also a member of the Genocide Studies Scholars Group?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm ashamed to be part of the same organization, but
you can't deny the expertise, though. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be glib, but maybe in the a modest proposal sense that if you are going to have a society on genocide scholars, the man did have some work experience, next to Chairman Mao and Joseph Stalin. In case Jamie Raskin, I hear he's looking for Joseph Stalin these days, so.
We have a lot to learn from him. Yes. Academically, theoretically.
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that brings us to the close. David, I'm sorry. I will, of course, link the article down in the description. I'm so sorry you had to go through the trauma of, again, such a brilliant organization of such bright, young, shining stars. Hopefully you shed such lights in future scholarly debates, as long as those are only on one side. And may the light of Gaza guide you, my friend.
It's better to burn out than fade away. That's what I say.
And again, coming from such brilliant 80s and 90s experience, very apropos way to end
Thank
it.
You.
Thanks again,
Thank
man.
You. All right, man. Talk to you.
All right, let's talk a little bit here, just at the end of the show. A couple of things that are really, really worth hitting in Bonus Tonus. Bonus Tonus, just a name the community gave for the time that's after the In Syndication Network broadcast hour that is allotted to the show on a lot of things. First of all, something I was really not expecting, but is very, very, very much worth seeing. Of course, I'm talking about Don Lemon accidentally misgendering Tim McBride of Delaware. Well, here you go.
This is my car. I'm heading back to Delaware.
It is, dude. Do you have a Hemi in here? What is it?
This is a beautiful Chevy Equinox.
Dude, man, male. Look at that car you're driving, brother. Oh man, I'm sorry. Just because the look on his face. I mean, again, I'm of the opinion that the California, the dude, is not necessarily. It's like saying guys. It's not really a phrase only to be, or a statement, a word only to be addressed to men. But the look on his face immediately was just like, oh, I'm mad about it. Which, man up, quit whining about that kind of stuff. So that brings us over to the best whining of all. What we didn't really get to dig into. RFK Jr.'s Thunderdome did eventually get into a shouting match with Bernie Sanders, who's very upset all the time. Bernie Sanders is very upset with the AOC. The planes did not work out, and the pudding. Here you go. The yelling match that was meant to be.
Marty McCary, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Oz, Vinay Prasad.
So you got a few doctors who agree with you, and I'm giving you the
Not
name.
a few doctors. What you're talking about is there's a big difference, Senator, between established science and the scientific establishment, which has been co-opted by the pharmaceutical industry.
So you're telling the American people that the American Medical Association, representing hundreds of thousands of people, have been co-opted and that they should not trust their doctors.
And I'm
the
telling
American
you,
Academy.
By the way, I just want to point out, up until about 5 minutes ago, Bernie Sanders was one of the guys who was saying that places like the American Medical Association and other medical institutions and collective organizations were bought out by pharmaceutical companies. Again, one of Bernie Sanders' big, massive targets to smack as the socialist guy was pharmaceutical companies. All of a sudden, though, RFK's holding those views on the right side of the aisle, just like immigration. Bernie has flipped so far, so fast, because as many like to claim he's a principled leftist, no. The dude is the same unemployed, angry, Ben and Jerry's licking socialist that he has always been.
Pediatrics, the American, and by the way, just for the record, every single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman.
I don't mean to be political, he says, yelling about politics. I don't mean to be political.
Politician.
I'm sorry, the pearl, we have to break out the pearls. The pearl clutching that is clutched like a rosary during Mass, all right? The pearl clutching from the left whenever there is a bipartisan committee and they don't like how things are going, to go, this isn't a political, how could you make this political? Meanwhile, they're calling everyone they disagree with fascist, Nazi, capitalist, billionaire, homophobic, transphobes.
Has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food
Everybody but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt...
Again, I want to point out that from earlier on in the show, that the individual sitting next to Bernie Sanders is Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who also took $800,000 from pharmaceutical companies.
This is the same guy, Bernie Sanders, who went on podcasts and complained that the electoral system was co-opted and is now owned by the rich and powerful, which is an even bigger conspiracy theory than saying that the American Heart Association is closely tied with the food industry, because it is. It's an open connection.
That's some big thinks you're thinking. I don't think Bernie Sanders does those big thinks, but we'll give him a chance here. He's yelling, he's preaching. I'm gonna have to find that organ sound clip again.
Campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were already president, you got $1.5 billion behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican got corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt, but you?
Again, so I do want to point out the irony of suggesting that RFK Jr., who didn't take money from pharmaceutical companies, is being lectured by a guy who also supposedly didn't take any money from pharmaceutical companies. Like, everyone else is corrupt but you. I, also the other pure as the driven snow individual. Does anyone else hear how that sounds to me? Yeah, producer Nick.
Looking at Bernie Sanders' open secrets, by health professionals, he's received almost $1 million. Granted, it's from quote unquote individuals.
Oh, yes, of course. Just individuals. Oh, yes. I'm going to be honest with you guys here. I personally don't give that much of a flip of a wooden nickel when it comes to individuals receiving campaign finance dollars. When you run for office, you're going to take money. The number of individuals who ran for something and then started taking money and then flipped their positions are pretty few. They really are. It's kind of the dirty secret of politics that no one likes to come in contact with, is that if you are willing to take money now, they're probably endorsing you because you already hold those views. And I'm sorry, it just makes more, this has been a study that's been conducted not by the education establishment, who I personally despise, but through multiple independent studies by means of open data correlation. I don't really care for that argument, but if you are going to get out there and make the case that everyone who takes money from group X, Y, and Z is terrible, yelling at the guy who hasn't taken money from that group, but you also, I don't know what he's trying to convince people of there. It doesn't make any sense. Bernie's like, I'm yelling at everyone, and I'm also yelling at myself, and that tree, and that mailbox, and also at AOC. Have you seen AOC? I go around with the country and the pudding. And it's incredible. Bernie Sanders is just like President Trump. He is a unique figure, accomplished a lot less, mayhaps, but a unique figure that will be memeable in the future histories. There was a lot more yelling. Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, who takes money from everybody since we're playing that game. Mark Warner yelled for like 3 minutes straight, and I'm not playing all 3 of these minutes here.
That the focus on.
So he yells 3 minutes.
Vaccine, Dr. Gruber, Dr. Good friend, the chairman. Well, then how is that going to happen?
He yells for 3 minutes. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, he announces that he's ready to lower the temperature after he has screamed, I kid you not, for 3 minutes.
Rural hospital's going to close. And they are looking for where those folks are going to go. I mean, you're supposed to be doing health care policy, not being the doctor in residence for all of America. I hope I can just say, hey, I'm still going to trust my doctor rather than your health advice. And obviously, Tom Cotton's going to, who knows who he's going to trust. But let me go back to politics.
I love it. I love it so much. And also, Tom Cotton, I don't like that guy from Arkansas. Great. Thank you. Yes, I too enjoy the random junior high quibbling. The reason I despise gatekeeping, just as a little moment of transparency here on the Tony Kinnett cast as we kind of wind things down, the reason that I truly despise gatekeeping as a former science teacher and administrator is that when I worked in Indianapolis public schools, right, and I'm in charge of all of these science teachers and then the elementary teachers when they're teaching science or STEM or anything like that, we would be in charge of setting the curriculum, writing a lot of the major tests, tracking, assigning certain standards, keeping, certain things for schools in line. And there was this idea that perpetuated by the staff itself that we were smarter, better. We knew the subject better than anyone. We were the betters, and we had to make sure we comported ourselves as esteemed, impressive leaders of the highest regard. Blah, blah, blah. And we would meet, and I swear to you, it was the same junior high, middle school at the lunch table, goofball garbage at those lunch table conversations as there are anywhere. Every adult in this country is exactly the same on the inside when it comes to how they comport themselves. This pretend idea that you see this from the Never Trump right, that, oh, well, Donald Trump doesn't have the decorum of a president like I think he should. Guys, quit being ridiculous. Adults act like just normal, regular people. Quit gatekeeping and pretending that these special areas of society somehow comport themselves like real gentlemen and ladies behind closed doors. American people just don't trust that. And it's why, according to the data, and I promised I would show you this because it really did shock me. Harry Enton over on CNN points out that I guess RFK Jr. is like the most popular member of the Trump cabinet.
Harry, it's interesting. All morning long, I've been saying Secretary Kennedy could be the most embattled member of the cabinet. Fact check me here.
No, I think that's a false. That's a Daniel Dale fact check for you. False on that. What are we talking about here? Net favorable ratings of key Trump officials. Look at this. RFK Jr. ain't exactly popular, but he's the most popular of all the key officials that we have recent polling on. Pete Hegseth, his net favorable minus 14 points. J.D. Vance, minus 11. Marco Rubio, minus 10. RFK Jr. is at minus 7, but minus 7 beats minus 10, beats minus 11, beats minus 14. So, no, RFK Jr. is not a drag on President Trump. He's not the most embattled. In fact, he is the most popular official in Trump's cabinet, at least according to the polling.
It is interesting, though there have been calls for his resignation among...
There have been calls for his resignation. Yeah, there are calls for every single Trump administration official's resignation. But Harry Enton is in fact correct. The reason, he goes on to say, we don't have the time to dig into it right now, even though it'd be bonus tonus at the end of the show here. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Americans were really burned by COVID. They've been really burned by the CDC. They were really burned during the 60s and 70s when Americans were told that one thing was healthy for you and the other stuff was bad for you. And then we got into the 80s and all of a sudden it was the fats that were really, really, really terrible for you. You got to avoid the fats. You had people with severe vitamin deficiencies because of it. That brought us into the 90s when the agricultural function of the Fed, when the USDA stepped in, brought forward the food pyramid that said you need 6 servings of bread at every single meal. High in calories, not very good. Then we got into the 2000s and the nutrition and medicine standards changed again. And then you had the early 2010s and all of the new research coming out. Oh, activated charcoal is very good. You should have activated charcoal in your toothpaste. And now it turns out you shouldn't have activated charcoal, or just charcoal. Activated charcoal means like nothing. And by the way, really, but you shouldn't have it in your toothpaste because it scrapes the enamel off of your teeth. Like everything changed. Americans do not trust that just because someone gets up in front of you and goes, "Hi, I'm Anthony Kinnett. I have 2 master's degrees. Actually, I signed my name, Anthony Kinnett, MAED''S PhD 8765309. Like no one cares because it turns out that no matter how many fancy letters go after the name of the individual, they're often wrong. And so Kennedy getting up in front of I will defend Kennedy to the grave on this alone. Taking away we're the government and we stamp our approval on things is not bad. It's not bad. Again, I disagree with Kennedy, especially on the MMR vaccine. I think he is dead wrong, 2 rights, incorrect. I do. Just on a holistic basis there, being wholly honest with you guys. I agree with him. The HPV vaccine, guys do not need to be vaccinated against cervical cancer because men don't have a cervix. Yeah, I think that he's right on those things. But if there was one thing he is correct about, if there was one thing that Sean Duffy at the Department of Transportation is correct about, if there was one thing that Doug Burgum at the Interior is absolutely correct on, that Brendan Carr, the FCC, is 100% correct on, regulations suck. They're dumb. They're awful. They make things worse. Why the federal government is stamping their approval on things is beyond me. It's why, by the way, I am really unhappy with the Trump administration taking, as the U.S. government, 10% of the stock of Intel. The government should not be stamping approval on things. They suck at it. I voted for narco boats at the bottom of the ocean, illegal immigrants being deported en masse from the United States, and a lot of other excellent things like dismantling the Department of Education's hyper-regulation the Trump administration has done so far. What they're doing right now with the National Guard, with illegal immigration, they're stellar things. It turns out that what RFK Jr. is doing is really popular with 90% of Americans on a basis of deregulation, and it is deeply unpopular with overeducated, angry old white women in suburbs who have nothing to do with their time. Their families don't want to be around them. They're insufferable at their jobs. And it just so happens that when you don't have faith, family, and community to invest in, you obsess over politics and the control of others, like some type of bastardized HOA. We'll be back tomorrow to finish out Friday and a fantastic week here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. You guys have a wonderful evening. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.